Well, then let's get to it, Brad. I
Yeah, let's
know I
go.
have a bunch of things written down. There was a ton of pressers from last week after the spring game. Obviously, Signetti spoke. We're going to get to that shortly. Indiana's bringing in transfers left and right. They brought in Stephen Daly and Kellen Watts or Kellen Wyatt. I keep calling him Watts, dude. I have
Stop
no
calling
idea
them that.
why. I
Stop
know.
doing it.
Kellen Wyatt on the defensive line. So we're going to get to them in a second. But we kind of got some surprise headlines from Curt Signetti today. The CBS Sports released an article basically just talking about the current state of college football and using Signetti really as the mouthpiece to kind of drive clicks and views towards this. But we did get a couple of interesting quotes out of it. The most interesting being something that I theorized about going back to last summer, and that was the actual price of the top flight rosters in college football. The number that came out from this article was 40 million. 30 to 40 million is what the industry believes. And not to pat myself on the back here, but when Ross Bjork, the Ohio State athletic director, dropped that $20 million number last year at Big Ten Media Day, I wrote an article basically saying, yeah, that's hilarious and not believable. I would add another 10 to 20 million onto that. Lo and behold, 40 million is the number that's coming out now. So what were your initial thoughts when you saw that number? Were you surprised?
No, not really, considering we already just saw the $10 million number for the college basketball rosters. We already know it's about a 90% football, 10% basketball kind of revenue share for a lot of these schools. So, those numbers definitely check out considering 10 mil. It might even be higher. It might get higher. But yeah, it makes sense. I'm sure he threw it back. And I think a lot of people were probably going to see this coming from Indiana. And I've already seen it online talking about, like he's complaining. Like, he said I'm sure you're going to get to the other quote, but it is kind of the same quote. He said, my pot of gold is nice, but we're not near 40, 30, 25, which means they're probably around like 20. Is probably what I would guess. Definitely major players. We're spending 10
Which
mil
is
in
a nice
basketball,
number.
20 plus in football. So it's just really nice to see overall just what Dolson and Pam Whitten are able to accomplish. That way they see the value long term of what athletics can do for a university. I always bring up Alabama as an example. I'm not going to say they're a prime institution to go to college at, but they've definitely taken a step up since Nick Saban was there. And that's just all the rankings that you see from colleges, like they back up what I'm saying. So yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, that number is just not surprising at all. 40 mil. I mean, they threw 10 mil at Bryce Underwood allegedly. So he
Yeah,
bought
that
he
was
bought a
Michigan. And that
janitor a car. Like a nice one. Nicer than
to
my car.
piggyback
I was jealous.
off the nice pot of gold statement, and it's like there were some people saying like, "Oh, Curt Signetti's complaining," and "Oh, he's saying he doesn't have enough money." One, what he said in the quote he said and the teams he named, from reading the article, very clearly wasn't a shot at those teams. This is more so the way I took it is Sig speaking directly to his administration, being like, "This is what it costs to play." But he went out of his way to mention Oregon, Ohio State, Texas Tech, and did state Texas Tech had oil money, which I thought was pretty funny.
That was just funny.
Notre
That's
Dame
that's just good banter.
and Miami as schools that are playing on a level
Mhm.
above. And he said you just have to be right then next tier, and that's pretty much where Indiana is. Like you don't have to spend $40 million on a roster to put together a really good roster. That being said, it's again, I don't also think he was just speaking to the administration, but maybe speaking to us, the fans as well, being like, there are schools out here outspending us by 20 million. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head that he's speaking to the fan base, speaking to the administration. I think more so, I don't know. The administration's done a great job, so I would say even more so probably the fans, which is great to see. I'm glad he is the one he allowed to talk about it, instead of another coach getting that kind of spotlight. So, all good. We'll see that take around like, you don't need to be at the next tier. That statement will stand against time. We'll see.
Yeah,
NIL
I
is
guess
too
it
new
is.
to
Be
make a
careful what you
statement
wish
like
for
that.
type of deal.
Yeah, it's like, you could see, how we'll be competitive, like no doubt. You're spending 20 mil on a roster, we'll be competitive, no doubt. But will we be at that? We talked about when we recap the Notre Dame game, like clear gap, and we talk about stacking years and all that stuff, and that comes with spending the money year after year. So if we're gonna go that route of being maybe more a little frugal with our right? Is that the
I don't
word?
know if I would
Frugal?
call it frugal. That
Like
kind of is the word. Like
that, yeah,
Moneyball-ish.
like not as like smart money spending, smarter money spending wise. Like that's the strategy we're going with instead of just having the 40 mil budget. And like the roster is taking shape. We like where we're at, but is it enough to compete with the big dogs? Long term, we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to put a yes or no answer to that at all. We'll see
I
how it
think that's
goes.
more than fair. And
Yeah.
like you said, we are in a really good spot roster-wise, and we'll get to Sig's presser again in a little
We
bit,
still have
but
to develop this talent from within, which is the thing. So it's like obviously that 40 mil is meant to retain your best players, is what he said, and then once you're able to do that, you just need to fill in the gaps of what you lost, eligibility wise, draft wise.
100%,
So
100%. And I still want to talk about this the roster spending in the 40 million and a statistic I saw today on Big 10 rosters. But you talk about, or Signetti talked about where he didn't see many potential holes in this roster, but one of the things that leaked out from his presser was that like maybe they're looking for linebacker depth. And then you look at the two moves they make in the portal and it's two edge guys. And so obviously there's still some moves to be made, but the roster building piece of it, like they're not maybe they're not going to get the number one guy in the portal. So maybe like, I guess TJ Bush Jr. ended up going to Cal, but like the number one rated edge rusher on every board, like maybe they're not going to be a player for, but like that doesn't mean that the third or fourth or fifth rated guy isn't a really good player who can play and be impactful on this level, especially in a Brian Haynes, Kurt Signetti scheme.
exactly. And remember when we previewed the spring roster? What did I say would be the the first position room we'd address coming out of the spring portal? What did I
Defensive line,
say? What did I
edge.
say? Specifically edge. And that's exactly what we addressed. Two guys right off the bat that kind of give us a new look in terms of what we're kind of expecting, especially with the D tackle transfers. I have an idea of just like personnel wise where we're at with these 8 guys that we have that seem to be playable depth that we have kind of attained over time. Are we good to go? Are we previewing daily and why now? I don't
Yeah,
want
I
to
was
jump
just going to
ahead.
throw, I mean, no, I did want to do that. I wanted to throw out a stat that I saw that the
Yeah.
average Big Ten roster in football is $3 million more. Or Big Ten teams are spending on average $3 million more on their
Yeah.
rosters than SEC schools. And the
I don't
total spend for Big
yeah.
Ten came out to like 60 million to 57 million. Now, 3
Yeah.
million, not a huge deal, but when you think about conference supremacy and a lot of the talking that was happening and the transition that
Yeah.
we started to see, like this is really the first time on paper I've seen, other than Ohio State obviously winning the national championship, that is an indication that like everything that was being said is true.
Yeah, so for our loyal listeners, I don't think we've really talked about our conference supremacy stance on these live shows yet, but yeah, we're very big like pro Big 10 obviously, and really do see the Big 10 as equal if not slightly better than the SEC at this point. And we see at least there's a narrative where that's obviously not the case. A lot of people feel the other way. And I think a lot of Big 10 fans are a lot more realistic in the fact that where it's probably like closer to equal than most people think. So seeing the total spend, which I don't think was just rosters, I think that's facilities, coaching staff, all that stuff.
I don't know.
Total
60
spend.
million. If Ohio State's spending 40, there's no way that was, you know what I'm saying? So somewhere the
Ohio
numbers
State
didn't
wasn't
make no sense.
spending 40 on
40
their
on their
roster.
roster.
Yeah, but that they only gave you the average 60 mil of the Big 10. So like, okay, you have Ohio State spending 100 mil, and then you have Northwestern probably spending like 30, and
Mhm.
that kind of works back over time to around 60. Can't imagine UCLA is above average there. Just knowing that program, they might be. I mean, they got Nico, but
They got both Imolavas.
yeah, Madden decommitted from them on signing day.
The other
So
thing, there's actually the real interesting thing, and I don't want to spend really any time on this, but it'll be. I'm
you
interested
can
to see
spend
what
time on
happens
this.
with the
Absolutely.
Madden Imolava situation because the Arkansas, I forget what the name of the NIL collective is, but the Arkansas NIL collective wants to enforce that contract and enforce it with a buyout. And I don't know, obviously, what the terms were, but the AD is behind it, and so this is going to be like one of the first, and it's not going to be the first time, obviously, like Jaden Rashada is like what suing Florida over $1 million or whatever. So these things are happening, but this is another like really high profile one where it's like, see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. We're getting some comments about, some Big Ten versus SEC takes in the comments. We can take those now, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, rip those now, and then we could talk daily and Wyatt.
All right. Peanut. 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 Top 5 of Big Ten versus top 5 SEC is close. Middle of the bottom of the SEC would dominate the middle and bottom of Big Ten. Can you agree with that? Can't agree with that dominate word. Maybe slightly edged. I don't know. I think top 5 Big Ten. I mean, Big Ten was here. Let's look at the facts. Top 4 bid league, 3 bid league last year in the SCFP. Obviously, I know that next tier, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Bama, but then we literally saw Michigan and Illinois take care of business up there. So I guess that still kind of falls into your top 5. So maybe top 7, Michigan. I think Big Ten clearly showed their strength up there. So after that, I mean, USC beat LSU last year on neutral field week 1. That happened. And, USC was bottom half of the Big Ten last year. LSU was top half of the SEC. And that was the result on a neutral field. If they played again, yeah, maybe LSU beats them. Like, that's how football goes. But that's what happened. You got to go based off the results. And it's very clear that a bottom tier Big Ten team can compete with a top half SEC team. Period. That's what we saw last year. USC ended up losing to Maryland, who was did they even make a bowl? USC did Maryland go bowling last year?
Off the top of my head, I don't
I'm
believe
gonna say
so.
no. I'm gonna say no. And they were able to take out USC. So I mean, there's tons of parity. I think Jamie Jordan, he was getting into it, but yeah, I don't know if I can agree with dominate there. I think it's close. I'm not saying it's clear Big Ten supremacy, but I mean, it's damn near equal year over year at this point. From just, obviously I'm going to give the SEC some kudos just based on their dominance over the past 20 years. I think that's going to carry over to my current take. Whereas like the past 2 years, Big Ten has kind of dominated the SEC head to head. So I'd say I call it even right now at this particular moment. It's about as even as you can get top to bottom. Like, I'm not going to debate like who's better, Northwestern and Mississippi State. I'm just not going to do trash teams. Like they're both bad. Like I don't see like. But
also
maybe
here, like,
Mississippi State beats them by 20. Maybe like.
I'll devil's advocate.
Kind of hard to contain, If
Jack Welch is hard to contain.
He gets 100 on the ground, what are they going to do about him? So
I was going to say, I'll devil's advocate the very, very bottom of the barrel, saying that I would say it's inarguable that the bottom half SEC teams, or at least like the last 2 or 3 teams in those standings, inarguably care more than a Northwestern or like a bottom feeder Big Ten school. So if you want to talk about it like that, but that being said, like Brad just put so elegantly, like they literally played last year. All these teams played last year. So
yeah, and we saw what happened in the playoff. We saw what happened in the bowl games. We saw what happened in the regular season. It's not it's not clear. Like if you're gonna lean one way, it has to be the Big Ten at this point. But you got to respect the SEC for as many national champions they've won. I would argue top heavy league. Don't play a full conference schedule, small playoff field in the past. But you've only had one 12-team playoff, so I can't make those points just yet. But yeah, I guess I'll eat on my words if I'm wrong throughout the future. We'll see. All right, our boy Jamie, NIL unleashed the old money Northern alums. No more 25K guy from a guy who owns a couple of car dealerships. Couldn't agree more, Jamie. Exactly. Hence seeing the $3 million difference in total spend year over year. I think that continues. I think as time progresses, I think Big Ten teams are going to be allowed to spend more. I mean, wait till UCLA starts spending, which is what it looks like they're starting to do. That's only going to, like, if that continues to increase, you get the UCLAs and the USCs back. You already have the Midwest powers coming into form. Nebraska's not going away spend-wise. Iowa's not going away spend-wise. I mean, it's just going to continue. I mean, I heard
Nebraska. I think Nebraska topped that spend list for the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's only going to continue moving forward. And it's totally the old Northern money. I mean, you're going to see it at Notre Dame.
Yeah,
Be very afraid of Notre Dame. We want to talk about old money. Oh man, there's a reason why they're in the Natty game, like year one of what we would call like the modern NFL NIL era of the first 12 team CFP. Is Jason Drake expected to be a backup shooting
hold
guard, or will he target another wing?
hold
Backup. All right,
basketball.
backup
Hold
guard.
basketball. We're gonna talk about basketball later.
I'm just gonna answer that quick though. Backup. In the more, yeah, John, love it.
On it like always.
Yeah. Bina, I see what you mean. I think it's a perception thing, really. Like it's not easy going on the road to Iowa, just as it's not easy going on the road against, I don't know, who we want to equate Iowa to, like South Carolina, like year over year wise, like
Florida.
it's really like I think there's a perception thing. Obviously the SEC crowds are insane. I'm not going to say like their fans aren't more rowdy than the Big Ten. It's still 90,000 people in a packed stadium. Still very loud.
We like to call it how we
change
see it
anything.
here. See it with our eyes, and that's how we call it. Like the SEC, you want to talk about football tradition. You want to talk about tailgating. You want to talk about the environments.
The
like
ambiance.
The Big Ten's got a way to go. Indiana, even like we love the environment around Indiana, but that's another area where like you go to a lot of these other schools, and like Brad can attest, he went to the playoff game at Notre Dame. Like it's some of these big game, big time atmospheres that have just been around for decades, damn near generations. Like it's different.
Yeah, obviously. I think it's just a perception thing. It's hard to tell too with the SEC playing an 8-game schedule. I know they get a lot of flack, but they also have a lot of out of conference tie-in rivalries. Like South Carolina gets Clemson every year. Florida has to play Florida State every year. Georgia plays Georgia Tech every year. So there is something to it. But then I look at those schedules, and then their other 3 are cupcakes. So it's basically the same thing. Like they are basically playing the 9-game conference schedule with an extra non-con in there. That's high level. But I see their schedules as pretty equal. I think it's really nice that the SEC gets, that they start their season a little early, and then they're able to get that, FCS team in November. I think that's a huge advantage when we're talking schedules. And like I said, perception thing when it comes to these brand names. Obviously, the SEC brand carries a lot more weight, but I think over the coming years, we're going to see the Big Ten really take an upkick. And PK says we need slot receivers. Let's continue.
Yeah, we're gonna get to it. Now, real quick, I just want to make the point on I do just want to make the point on Georgia. Georgia's non-con this year, if you take out Georgia Tech, and I made this point on the Voice of College Football show with Mark Rogers, Marshall, Austin Peay, Charlotte.
Yeah, exactly.
Charlotte game is in November. So
it's
what are we doing? Do you want to talk about this? You want to talk about the slot? We can talk about the slot right now. I want to talk Daly and Wyatt just because those are the 2 new additions to the team. But at the same time, like obviously, I think they're going to add a slot. There's a couple guys in my own head I'd like them to go after. Like for personal reasons, Trevor Pena, the kid from Syracuse, graduated from my high school. That would be dope.
Right,
I have no idea how realistic that is, though. Like I haven't seen any smoke there. Like nothing.
Yeah. I saw like, UNC, UCLA, USC, something like that. Like the basics, what you'd expect.
But like Omar Cooper spent a lot of time in the slot during the spring. Signetti said that everyone, like after Mekhi Jackson's hamstring injury after practice 4, everyone but Charlie Becker worked in the slot. But Coop started there in the spring game, caught 2 touchdowns from the slot. We saw LeBron Bond have a really good spring game too. I believe it was like 5 for 36 and a touchdown as well. They're going to go add somebody. They just haven't really declared who that's going to be yet. It's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I didn't really know about the Mekhi Jackson, which is probably really bad on me being on the show. But I did not know about the Mekhi Jackson hamstring until just now.
Nobody knew.
And we definitely do need a slot. I don't know. I do love the idea. Does he have to be the starter? I don't know. Could he be like a complimentary slot? Yeah, 100%. That's more the line I'm thinking, because I really am have talked myself into the idea of the 3-headed monster approach. We're just mixing in Surratt, EJ, and Coop throughout because they're complete route tree guys. So you can have them play in any position. They know how to run the correct route. So, and it only increases their draft stuff. They're going to be all for it. They're going to put in the work. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, they might get the whatever slots they bring more involved. But yeah, definitely seeing some going to see some wide receiver action in the portal, 100%.
Yep. The Mekhi Jackson injury, like I guess announcement or whatever, that the only place that came out was from Signetti at his presser after the spring game. And then he also went out of his way to say that they like to, like, during the season, during games, it's like situationally, okay, which wide receiver runs this specific route the best versus this coverage, or who's got the matchup. And they do like to rotate guys. And we saw it last year. Like, guys played pretty much all over the place. Now Cooper and Surratt, because of the depth they had inside, were primarily outside guys. But like, again, Sig during his presser said, like, he believes that every wide receiver should be able to play on the right side, on the left side, and in the slot. It's just, are you a complete player or not? And I believe we have a lot of complete players in that room. Again, depth purposes, like Brad said, does this guy have to come in and play starter reps? No, but will they need another body in that room because they do like to go 7-8 deep on that, in that like position group? Yeah, they probably will.
Yeah. I think they're going to mix and match. I think you're going to see a lot. They love just rotating tons of guys in. So with the amount of, with Jackson and more, with Jackson having the hamstring, which is a lingering injury, which is why I'm really concerned about that one.
Sig did say he expects him back.
Well, Morris, but like, how does it hold up in fall? How does it hold up throughout the season? They're going to need to bring a guy in, because obviously Mekhi Jackson would be the solution. It's like him being a big yak guy, get him in space in the slot. He can definitely run those routes. Thinking more of a smaller, twitchier guy that can really get open easily would be the most ideal. Get in the portal. I hear Knight, the JMU guy, I don't know if he went anywhere yet, but there's a relationship there. So if Sig feels he's able to compete at this level, then wouldn't be surprised to see him.
I agree. Let's talk Stephen Daly and Kellen Wyatt, because I think my takeaway from this and the general public's and your takeaway from this seem to be slightly different. So what did you see when they brought both? Well, first Daly, who, like, this kid's going to be a really impact player. Like, we've talked about Buffed Prime a ton on this channel. I'm a huge fan of T-Cal and the way they break down players and the way they go over film. This kid's a Buffed Prime 5-star. Like, he's going to be a really good player. He's going to make an impact. I've seen a lot of people say that they think Daly's going to be opposite Kamara and play that end spot. But again, Signetti a couple weeks ago went out of his way to say that hand in the ground DN, that end roll, is typically larger than Kamara played last year at 6'1", 265. The two guys they brought in right around 6'1", 6'2", 260. So they profile a lot more like studs. What did you see?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because obviously what Sig says is law, right? Unless he's giving us some sort of smoke here. I don't see him. He doesn't really do that. So it doesn't align with like what I see now with the personnel. I mean, it's surprise. I would see us going more bigger D end as opposed to like these edge guys, because we already had Ndukwe there and Landino's out there on the edge. And then you would think you'd want to backfill like that like that behind Landino. You know, you want like the bigger end, right? So now how I'm seeing paper, it now, like personnel, like if I didn't know that, you know, I would be looking at this like, okay, they have two bigger ends, Kamara and Daly, and they have two twitchier edges, like in Ndukwe and Wyatt, that would come off the edge. So that would be the two deep at the D end, right? That's what you would think initially. But then, you know, maybe it's more so like that's what I would like project it just straight up personnel wise without knowing anything about IU football. Just evaluating the talent, right? When it comes to what Sig's saying about how they're going to approach the position, Kamara being the stud, he has to be bigger. So then it's like Landino, and then behind him is Ndukwe, Daly, Wyatt. So now all of a sudden they have four studs. So maybe it's going to, maybe like they start Landino, Kamara, Wheeler, Tucker, like we all thought all along. And then they may go smaller packages throughout, make Kamara the big end in pass rush situations, put in Ndukwe, Wyatt, Daly, whoever you need on the other end. And that's kind of what we might see for a bulk. So it gives them a lot of flexibility for what they want to do. Because you talk about Landino could go inside out. Jose Wheeler can go inside out. I don't see Tucker or Ratcliffe doing that. They're straight noses, but that type of, talent where they can go inside out, allowing Ndukwe, Kamara, Daly, White to thrive in pass rushing situations, having Landino go inside on pass rushing situations, it gives this, very talented end D line group that we already saw has a lot of talent up the middle, gives them a bigger boost around the edge overall. So we like to see that kind of get paired to what they already have going on in the middle with Tucker and Ratcliffe and Wheeler. Maybe Landino goes back inside and it's in Ndukwe, Kamara, Daly, Wyatt, and maybe Kamara goes back to regular. Maybe he goes away from stud going to fall. Just seeing what the personnel's at. Like maybe, things kind of change, things evolve. That's just life. Whether that's a football program or a corporate job, like things have to evolve and you have to move on the fly. And if you're able to get talented guys like Wyatt and Daly, hell, maybe we put Kamara back at the big DN spot like he was last year, where he still led the country in pressures. Like maybe we keep him there. It wouldn't be the worst idea of all time. Like that's the kind of nice thing of bringing back an All-American like Mikhail Kamara, is it gives you all those options on what you can do. Maybe we even go crazier and go Kamara, Landino in the middle on a straight up 3rd and long, like put Kamara and Landino in the middle and just have Daly and Wyatt go after the quarterback around the edge. Like that could be exciting stuff. We're in Ndukwe, and yeah, you can get really kind of crazy with it with what they got going on.
Yeah, they're insanely deep, and there are, I would argue, a lot of worse positions where you can have quote unquote too many guys, like especially in a position where you want 100% effort, especially in a Bryant Haynes defense where, much like wide receivers, you hope that you're keeping your pass rushers fresh and you're rotating guys in and out. You need, yes, obviously Mikhail Kamara is going to play a lot, get the bulk of the plays, be on the field all the time. But for those moments where he needs a breather and like the way they can move guys across this defensive line, like you said, inside out guys, pick matchups, like they legitimately go 8 deep.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about Ndukwe as a breakout player. And if the roster, like if they keep adding to the defensive line the way they do, then he might end up as the 4th edge. Like right now he is the 4th edge.
All of a sudden they're back to 8 playable guys, especially if you consider Landino going inside, like permanently. Like it'd be like Wheeler, Tucker, Ratcliffe, Landino inside, and then the other 4, which I keep saying over and over again, on the outside. And it just gives them, yeah, it's very exciting. And Ndukwe is clearly, obviously, the biggest question mark. Haven't really seen him in that situation, but we've been high on him since our first episode of Six Inside. So, I mean, we're just going to keep our chips into that basket, stick to our guns here and say, hey, he's going to be a big contributor in his 2nd year in the program.
I agree.
And then you have Collins, just he's around, Turvey. Worst comes to worst, he got thrown a little Andrew Turvey action, 18. See the walk-on flying around. I mean, Monette, with Harrison leaving, you got to think Hall and Garcia are really good. The true freshman noses that they brought in. God is just, yeah.
But I saw Garcia's name pop up a couple times on Twitter from people who were at the spring game in person, and we'll get to spring game takeaways in a little bit. But that was definitely one of them, is seeing it, like, because obviously anytime you have freshmen, even like redshirt freshmen, it's like you want to see flashes, you want to hear good things, but you don't exactly need to put the weight of the world on their shoulders. Like you want to give them time to develop and work into it and become college students and all that stuff. And so to see like Garcia obviously wasn't the only one of the freshmen whose names were popping up that night. It's like really, really exciting, especially at that position. Closing thoughts on Daly and Wyatt before we move on to the other addition to the Indiana team that won't show up until 2026.
No, I'm going to respond to PK, Maryland linebacker, might rotate as a linebacker as well as edge. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. We got Jones, Hardy.
No, I'm going to say
not the way they operate.
Say no.
Really.
Yeah, just because if you look at Indiana, that like 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", 260 is like exactly what they want for their stud spot. If you look at their linebackers, like Aiden Fisher's what, 220, 230 maybe.
Yeah.
Like very light. Roe Hardy again, 220. Like Isaiah Bones Jones is the thumper in the room, and he's like 230. Yeah, so like they like their defensive line to be big and to attack and to create havoc and to let their linebackers, specifically Fisher, scrape up over the top and find out what's going on. They put a lot of pressure on their linebackers and their secondary to tackle, obviously specifically Fisher. So I don't, with the athletic profile of Wyatt, while he probably can play in space a little bit, the space is definitely different in this defense compared to the one he was in. And Indiana went out of their way to say he's playing defensive line.
Yeah, and Wyatt's like a pass rusher. Like that's what he does. That's his whole thing. Like when he goes to the league, like he's going to be an edge. Like that's what his role is. Like you were saying, they like the lighter linebackers, sideline the sideline guys that can cover field because they only put 2 of them out there because they go 5 DBs. So it's a very specific mold that Wyatt doesn't fit. And I'm going to follow it up. Only 3 linebackers with experience from PK. I'll counter. I think that's actually very, very solid going into a year. I like the depth. I Jones, Hardy, Fisher. I know they're going to show up. That we rotated 3 last year. We have 3. Worst comes to worst, we still got Turner, Utzinger, and Quentin Clark back there. Whoever's the best out of those 3, they're competing for that 4th spot right now.
I will
Iron
say,
and Ryan, I think we're going to be good.
I agree.
All right.
But linebacker is one of the specific spots that Cignetti and his presser did single out as where they need to develop more depth. So I do believe that actually we will see some sort of addition to that room. I don't think it's going to be on the starter level. I think they obviously Aiden Fisher, captain of the team. Like he's obviously starting. Roe Hardy, Cignetti said again to talk about his presser, was back half of last year was the starter in 3 linebacker packages. He's been the starter all spring. And then Bones Jones is kind of that change of pace, 3rd linebacker if they need to get a 3rd guy on the field in certain packages. But we typically, like Brad said, we saw them pretty much go with Jalen Walker and Aiden Fisher exclusively at most times last year. But the room is like, and if especially, and we don't know, but it depends on like how they see the development of guys like Quentin Clark and then even like freshmen, like because we know they'll rely on freshmen if they're ready, but if they're not ready, then I could see them going after a depth guy.
Yeah, and Caden Turner's just around, redshirt junior. I don't know how good he is or anything like that. I haven't heard too much about him. He's around. He still hasn't hit the portal. Obviously,
great TikTok page.
Obviously, he thinks he's in a position to play.
Great TikTok page.
As obviously, we talk about injuries. Injuries happen, and I think when you think long term for the program, like what would you rather have, like that 1-year senior rental that you're lucky you have him, or are you going to give the shot to the redshirt freshman, give him some burn, see what he can do? I'd rather give it to the freshman, just long term, give guys experience so we can go in with more than 3 linebackers with experience, quote unquote, and continue stacking years, stacking days. Yeah, John said Turner started the spring game. There we go. There we go. Caden Turner's the 4. Like it's he might have, maybe that comment by Sig was a way of pressing Caden Turner like, hey, stop making TikToks.
No, keep making TikToks. Good content. Caden Turner, if you're listening, he's like the only guy making Indiana like good content and like showing I think he's doing good stuff out there. He's doing good stuff.
Yeah, and Walker got hurt a couple times when we had Bones Jones and we had Hardy. I can't and Hardy was a true freshman last year. Who's to say one of these true freshmen doesn't become real Hardy? Who's to say? But I'm not going to put any pressure on any of those kids. They're going to figure it out. I
won't put self-imposed limitations on them, and we won't.
I'd be surprised if we added in the portal, because if we did, I'd be shocked if Bones Jones stuck around, to be honest, if we added a guy.
No, I don't think if they add in the portal, it's not going to be in front of Bones Jones. It would be like I think it would be like a redshirt freshman,
like Najee Logan type.
Exactly. Like a guy who you're hoping can be.
It could be Najee Logan. It could be him. Who knows?
But no, I don't think like those are your 3 guys. Like and from everything that Cignetti said in the last week or 2 weeks, like I wouldn't be worried if you're Bones Jones. Like I wouldn't be worried about being like I would feel pretty comfortable about my position on the team if I was one of those 3 linebackers. Hardy, Fisher, obviously, Bones.
I mean, he'd be in the portal by now. I feel like it's been
100%
long enough time before we saw the D lineman leave to where it's like, okay, it's kind of been a while since you've seen a guy at Indiana dip in the portal. We're probably done with our kind of roster cuts as well. Column, I guess, just being like, hey, maybe you should. It's not so much cuts; it's more so, hey, I think you'd have a better opportunity somewhere else. You're really talented.
But we saw Kenny Dillingham do that to a bunch of walk-ons, which I thought was really cool. But that's not Indiana football related. But no, I do kind of agree with Jamie here, where he says, I honestly, it's pretty unusual to have 3 guys who've played as much as they have come back when you only play 2 at the position. typically.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say it's a very good thing to have.
It is.
I'd say I wouldn't say only 3. I'd say like, wow, we got 3 guys that we've seen play big time snaps for this football team last year.
I want to jump into these press conferences, but first I do want to talk about one last future Indiana Hoosier linebacker. The Hoosiers picked up a massive, massive commitment in the class of 2026. Their second commitment. It is top 5 athlete in the 2026 class, Henry Olinger from Columbus, Ohio.
He's an Ohio kid. That's big because California, number 1 in Heisman's, number 1. Who's number 2? The great state of Ohio. Wow, unbelievable! Tons of football talent from that state. Getting the top 5 athlete. Period
in the class.
Is great, but then getting a guy from Ohio who's probably going to be a top 10 recruit when it's all said and done in that state, big time get. Going to play linebacker with some. He's a slot wide receiver linebacker right now in high school. He's definitely
he's a running back.
Oh well, whatever.
He's a running back, and I think he's technically higher.
I've seen him lined up at receiver.
Technically higher ranked as a running back,
though. Saw him play receiver.
Maybe. I mean, dude's a freak. He's a top 5 athlete, Brad. He's a freak.
Yeah, he's an athlete. He's listed as athlete.
But this is a kid who they've been recruiting for 6-8. Like he was, on campus during the season, I believe, or maybe just after the season. But this is a name that I've seen pop up over and over again. I know the staff was high on him, and obviously you have to be to get a kid to commit this early in the class. And then you get on top of that, his commitment is announced with a Hayes Fawcett edit.
Yeah. So yeah, linebacker helps on the way. It's on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not coming until next year. But
in their official visit photo, I think I tweeted it out. Like we're gonna look back on that photo, I think, and Olinger is gonna be 2-time all-conference linebacker, coming off a natty, and we're just gonna look so nostalgically over that initial photo because I think he's part of that next generation. Obviously, we talked about this first 2 classes, and obviously they're the building blocks of what we're trying to stack years, get to that pinnacle of the sport, right? This is kind of where it's like, okay, this group, the guys we're going to start bringing in, like this would be like the guys that would play in theory on that team, like 4 years. I'm not calling out a natty within 4 years, guys, but let's be realistic.
No,
if we're trying to build, when we're competing at that pinnacle, like if we're trying to stay like on schedule, got to expect, the natty will probably come year 6. Like realistic, like Penn State still hasn't gotten there. They've had Franklin for years. And it's taken them a while. So it's just like keeping those expectations, we'll be competitive, but, Olinger could be part of a special group that gets us to the pinnacle. And he's just a very highly rated recruit and hopefully is a building block on this class that could be the best in IU's history is what I would kind of expectations for this 2026 class. At this 100%. Point, could be the greatest IU football class of all time.
This isn't hyperbole. Like he might end. He could. I think he actually is right now like a top 10 recruit in Indiana history. I don't know how high up he goes, but like his 24/7 composites 89. Like he's very. I believe he's comparable to like the level of prospect that Baldwin was last year. I could be wrong. There was no Ohio State on his offer list, but there was Miami. But no, you're absolutely right. Like
we're on him very early.
Yeah, very, very early. But when you talk about developing your classes and what that next step looks like, I think it's more than fair to expect that the class of 2026 almost should be the best class in Indiana history. Like they just came off the best year in school history. Like you should be able to attract more talented players. And obviously like stars don't matter. And you're looking at a guy like Roe Hardy, who we're going to keep talking about, who just continues to produce and play awesome football as a 0-star kid. But while the sites aren't 100% accurate, like when everybody has a kid rated as a 4-star, like the kid's pretty good at football. And so you like to see Baldwin higher. Cool. Thank you, PK. This kid's extremely talented, super athletic. And it's like when Brian Haynes looks at you and is like, I want you to play linebacker in this defense, like you look at what that means on the field. And it's like, yeah, this kid's uber talented.
The only site is that doesn't really have him high is 24/7, which is the site I use. He's a composite 4-star, 3-star on 24/7. So I think he's an under the radar guy that will probably pick up some steam as his senior season, which he has yet to play, rolls on. And yeah, we talk about the talent evaluation from SIG, period. And then next line and his staff, which they're all, Signetti, what do you call it? Coaching tree guys, coaching tree descendants, whatever. Yeah, they know his recruiting philosophy. I think it's important to know every time we talk about recruiting. Signetti was the recruiting coordinator when, through Nick Saban's first 3 years at Alabama, built the foundation of that university to where it is today.
Let's not forget who was
obviously with a lot more under the table resources, but very, was able to get the right guy.
Let's not forget who was personally thanked in Julio Jones's retirement video the other week. It was Curt Signetti by name.
The dude don't miss very often. You don't miss.
No, he does not.
It's you can't expect to hit 1,000, but he has a very good track record for evaluation and roster construction and all those things, which I find very important in the game. Like Jim Mora, UCLA, fantastic coach, just picked off all the 5s and 4 stars and wasn't great at constructing the roster, right? Lack of O-line depth, but they had they had Josh Rosen and Soso Jamabo and Zach Whiteley, and they got a commitment from Roquan Smith, and then Ulbrich got poached by the Falcons and Georgia got him. And that's a whole conspiracy that I have, and they're in on it. But it's and they still were average 8-4, 9-3. It takes constructing a roster and then having the coaching staff to back it up, and the scheme and the play calling, and everything has to kind of fall on together. And Sig's the CEO. He's won everywhere. Google me. We're just going backwards. Let's keep going.